Hi everyone, I am Ms. Delia Zain, the Module Coordinator for Heritage Conservation, Theories, Principles and Practice at Taylor's University. The first lecture for this module is called What is Heritage Conservation? I would like to start the lecture with a quote or phrase from Mr. Y. Teck Yong, the Managing Director at August Building and Engineering in Singapore. He wrote, "As we advance into the future, landmarks are sometimes unceremoniously razed to the ground to make way for shiny new skyscrapers. Yet many do not realize that what we lose is far more important than the mere brick and mortar. When the wrecking ball strikes, chunks of our history and identity will forever be wiped from the surface of the earth. Do our past not deserve a future?" So if you're taking this module, you are the few people who are very concerned about the impending fate of our heritage building and culture. Upon completing this module, I believe you will be emotionally and passionately involved in the conservation of heritage buildings, not just in Malaysia but around the world. In this first lecture, let's try to understand what is heritage conservation by asking the right question. The aim of this first lecture is to give you an introduction to the meaning of heritage conservation and for you to familiarize with the basic terminologies. The items that I'll be presenting in these lectures are mostly questions. As you can see here in this content, all the topics are all questions. So the first question you need to ask is, why are you here? So why are you taking this module and what are your interests? Okay, is it because you love to travel? Is it because you love history? Is it because you appreciate heritage buildings and you see yourself as a conservationist? Is it because you are a romantic person, because you love all these classical building and sites or cities, Whatever the reason is, I hope you will find an answer after this lecture if you don't have one, okay? Because this subject is very fascinating, but it could be quite dry and boring to some people. But if you have a passion in heritage building, then it will not be a problem, right? As the module coordinator, the reason you're here is actually for you to learn about conservation practice like adaptive reuse of buildings or culturally significant places. You are here as well to gain techniques for documentation, conservation practice and interpretation of culturally important places, and to enhance your understanding and appreciation toward buildings and cultural heritage. So the second question is, why heritage conservation? Why does it exist? Heritage conservation is important for identifying, recording, analyzing and protecting heritage and cultural resources, almost like a mixture of archaeologists plus historian and architect combined together actually. It plays an important role to define landmarks as well as to generate economic return and to support the tourism industry. Conservation of heritage building is very important because it provides some sense of identity and reminder for future generation. Heritage buildings basically represent the past history and culture of a country. So sometimes if you want to understand a city or a place, you can actually look at the buildings. These two images that I share with you in the slides are images of actually Thailand in Chiang Mai. So this building, if you look at a glance, maybe you thought that it's actually in Malaysia, but it's not. So it will be interesting to actually learn more about the history of Chiang Mai to understand why why the architecture in Chiang Mai and also maybe in Malaysia looks almost similar. Heritage buildings are subjected to process of degradation with time, which leads to a situation in which they are unfit to the purpose which they were built. So then it will be our responsibility to decide whether this building should be preserved or conserved and retained, or to be used for other purpose. What is heritage? What is conservation? What is heritage conservation? Let's start with heritage. Heritage is the full range of our inherited tradition, monuments, objects, and culture. Most importantly, it is the range of contemporary activities, meanings, and behaviors that we draw from them. Okay? And conservation means all measures and action aimed at safeguarding the tangible, which is the physical items, and the intangible, which are the non-physical items, cultural heritage, while ensuring its accessibility to present and future generation. Okay, so when you combine these two, you get heritage conservation. So heritage conservation deals with actions or processes that are aimed at safeguarding the character, defining elements of a cultural resource so as to retain its heritage value and extend the physical life of that certain element. Okay? So what is culture heritage? Culture heritage reminds me of CNC, or Culture and Civilization in Foundation. Okay, for my students, they had to make some books, a photo book about a culture or a custom of their choice. So if you did those kind of assignment, this will be very easy. This module will be very exciting or similar to that, but in more depth. All right. So cultural heritage is an expression of the way of living developed by a community and passed on from generation to generation, including custom, practice, places, object, artistic expression, and values. So, cultural heritage is often expressed as either intangible or tangible cultural heritage, as stated in ECOMOS 2002. Okay, you can see here, these are my images from Chiang Mai. You can the intangible cultural heritage are the feeling of going to those temples, the sacredness of being at that place. Okay, and the tangible part would be something that you can touch, can feel and eat. Example, the food, or maybe the architecture, physical elements. Okay. Cultural heritage can be distinguished in 3 different types. Okay, one of it is built environment, like the buildings, townscape, archaeological remains. For example, the A Famosa. Next is the natural environment, like rural landscape, coast and shorelines, agricultural heritage. For example, this is actually the limestone pinnacle at Gunung Mulu National Park. And the next one is artifact, books and documents, objects and pictures, as shown as an example shown in this image here. Number 5, what is architectural heritage conservation? Architectural conservation described as the process through which the material, historical and design integrity of the built heritage are prolonged through a careful planned intervention. So it's actually a process of how the construction of this conservation of heritage buildings. Okay, how you're gonna solve the situation or the condition of the building. Here I would like to share with you the visitor center in Pombal, Portugal by architect Komoko. It is an example of an adaptive reuse project. So if you're interested in heritage and conservation, these are the type of things that you can do, and you can see that the new elements are not ever overwhelming, or is very minimal to highlight the old features of the building. Okay. This is another project, Installation and Structures, Ronde, Denmark. Architect MAP architect, Mass Studio new construction. Okay, so you can see how this new element is being inserted into this ruin in this structure. Okay, in this ruin structure. And the mixture of old and new make it a very interesting space without disrespecting the old structure. You can read about it more in Arc Daily. Next, what is the difference between heritage and history? History is the study of the past, and heritage refers to the value, object, and qualities such as historic buildings and traditions that have been passed down from previous generation. History is the branch of knowledge dealing with the past, and heritage is something that is handed down from the past as a tradition that evokes a nostalgic sense of tradition or history. So, history is study of the past event, particularly in human affairs, past as a whole, looking at the origin or civilization, their evolution. That is history. Heritage is the treasure object and qualities that have been passed down from previous generation, and a reminder of the past, or connected with artifacts, sites, buildings, tradition, and literature. Okay, so I hope that gives you a clear understanding the difference between heritage and history. Next, what is preservation and what is conservation? They sound the same, okay, but actually these two words often confuse us, just like honor and respect, noble and classy. Okay, preservation and conservation at first sight may seem as one and the same concept. Both involve lending protection to something, but how that protection is carried out and to what degree is the difference between preservation and conservation. Preservation is far more stricter than conservation. So if you see in this diagram, conservation is sustainable use of natural resources, and preservation is hands-off, means you cannot touch it at all or use it. Preservation means to keep an object or space in its original intact state to prevent any kind of degradation, decay, or damage. Conservation can be defined as resource management within provided economic and social restraint, manufacturing utilities for maximum numbers of demanders without draining natural resources, and endorsing the ever-changing character of biological system. So now we come to this question: what is heritage conservation, theory, principle, and conservation? It is obviously in this module. So this module is intended to give students a practical understanding of key principal theories and method of documentation of heritage conservation to enable students to understand the importance of preserving cultural and architectural heritage. In this module, students are guided to develop their awareness and understanding of the different approach of heritage conservation of buildings and landscape. Students will also explore the differences between conservation, restoration, and reconstruction within a historical and cultural context. Conservation principles, policy, and guidance sets out 6 high-level principles. Number 1, the historic environment is a shared resource. Number 2, everyone should be able to participate in sustaining the historic environment. Number 3, understanding the significance of a place is vital. Number 4, significant places should be managed to sustain their values. Number 5, decision about change must be reasonable, transparent, and consistent. Number 6, documenting and learning from decision is essential. The principle responds to the need for a clear, overarching philosophical framework of what conservation means at the beginning of the 21st century. Conservation principle sets out method for thinking systematically and consistently about heritage values that can be ascribed to a place. People value historic places in many different ways. Conservation principle shows how they can be grouped into 4 categories. Category 1, evidential value, the potential of a place to yield evidence about past human activities. Number 2, historical value, the way in which past people, event, and aspect of life can be connected through a place to the present. It tends to be illustrative or associative. Number 3, aesthetic values, the way in which people draw sensory and intellectual stimulation from a place. And number 4, communal value, the meaning of a place for people who relate to it or whom it figures in their collective experience or memory. I hope you pay attention to this item because this could be very, very useful to be elaborated in assignment 1 or the final project. Question number 9, why is heritage conservation important? Conserving our built heritage is an integral part of our urban planning. Retaining the beauty, nostalgia, and culture lies within the walls of our heritage buildings. Conservation is not a mere preservation of a facade or freezing a building in time. By favoring restoration over replacement, we preserve the ambience, character, and a living piece of our history. Most importantly, they also add variety and spark visual interest within the place or a city. Benefits from heritage conservation. Heritage preservation is a long-term investment that benefits us today and leaves behind an invaluable resource for generations to come. Here are 5 notable benefits we can reap from conserving our built heritage. Retaining our identity, promote cultural tourism, increase property value, economic sustainability, and reduction of demolition waste. Do you know that conservation and restoration of heritage buildings are the ultimate form of recycling? Research has shown that the demolition of a typical brick house results in an average of 60 to 100 tons worth of waste. To top it off, restoration is also proven to be a massive energy saver. The energy required to demolish an old building and erect a new one is estimated to be equivalent to the energy needed to operate it for 40 years. Imagine the amount of invaluable resources and savings that could be put to better use. So, as a summary and conclusion, heritage and conservation plays an important role to preserve the identity of a place and as a sustainable solution for the environment and economy. To end this lecture, I would like to quote, rehabilitating historic properties conserve taxpayers' dollar, conserve our local heritage, and conserve the natural environment. Rehabilitating historic buildings and using the infrastructure that is already in place to serve them is the height of fiscal and environmental responsibility. That's by Donovan Ripkema, Place Economics. And that's it. Thank you.